name is Laird, and I'm Government Affairs Director for the Realtor Organization, Vermont Association of Realtors. And I'm a business owner, principal owner of a real estate company and a construction company where we put up our hammers for the time being in Woodstock.
Great. And I'm Peter Tucker, President, Vermont Association of Realtors, and I'm Managing Broker of Vermont Country Properties, Sotheby's Realty in Stowe, Vermont. So, I think what we wanted to do today was to really extend the conversations that we have been having in a leadership conference and legislative day this morning on kind of the future of Vermont. I reached out to my leadership team of my President's Council. We have 14 boards in Vermont, so all 14 presidents, the Board of Directors of the Association of Realtors, and our Government Affairs Committee, which is about 20 members, and really posed two questions to them. One was, what kind of things would be positive in terms of stimulating the real estate industry? And then a further question of what types of economic development proposals can we bring to hopefully be part of the solution to help the state economy. And I think that what I'd like to do is just start by saying it's a difficult challenge for us because we feel like we're battling legislation, whether it's tax policy or environmental policy or just general directives. There are things that are going on that we feel we have to make our point known, and our point may be an opposing opinion. But what we really strive to do, and Chris Rice, our lobbyist, has really guided us well over the past several years of trying to be a good participant, looking for solutions, not just pointing out problems. So that said, I'd like to start with the problems and then move on hopefully to the solutions. We are obviously aware of the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission's report on flattening the tax structure. It has some great admirable objectives. However, we do feel that portions of it are going to be severely impact the real estate business. And just to step back one second, I think that the biggest reason why we're a lobbying group here in Montpelier is because we work with property owners every day. All of our clients are property owners. Our customers are property owners. It's a constant in our business. That's who we work with and who we represent. They are a very diverse group. They're own property all over the state. Where we are a group that's very focused on issues and trying to gain an understanding of the issues and to really advocate for the property owners. So while some trade associations will be looking out for their industry, our goal is really to point out how policy affects the property owners of the state of Vermont. The Blue Ribbon Tax Panel had suggested that we move from a taxable income at the federal taxable income level to an adjusted gross income, and that would flatten the tax rate obviously, and would be we would look more equal to other states. But the opposite side of that is really and we had a discussion today. There are winners and losers in this proposal. Well, it's clear to us that the winners are probably all the taxpayers pretty much equally across the board. But specifically, the losers in that discussion are people who are going to be losing the mortgage interest, carrying that tax load would be shifted dramatically on the property owners because they would no longer have the deductions available to them. The other portion of the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission report dealt with sales tax on services. And this is something that, certainly our service as a realtor would be taxed, and we would pass that on to the consumer. But if you really look at an average real estate transaction, there are 9 services involved in every real estate transaction. each service would be taxed. And so that's, and some of the taxes are small, some are larger, but would add substantially to the closing costs required. For many property owners, for sellers who are right at the limit of barely getting the proceeds they need out of a sale to close their mortgage, that can be a challenge. For buyers who are striving to deal with higher down payments required by current mortgage requirements, it may just put them out of the game. It's going to take away the possibility of home ownership for many of these people. So these are things, and we're testifying Ways and Means this afternoon on this, and I don't, it's eventually you may see bills, the tax policy bills come through this committee, but just to point out that there are things that we're concerned about. There is another bill requiring a evaluation of homes at the time of sale for energy efficiency. This is a bill that we feel there are better ways to do. I mean, the goal is admirable, but the execution is maybe not quite the correct way. Just to briefly, help you understand, we have about 315,000 homes in the state of Vermont. Last year we sold approximately 4,000 homes. I haven't done the exact calculation, but I think that if we just did energy audits at the time of sale, it would take us about 80 years to get through the home supply. There are better ways to do it. There's ways to just provide energy efficiency credits. Actually, the federal government has one right now, and it's been re-upped. And our goal would be to find ways to educate homeowners, and we're doing that right now to educate our realtors and to make it an important thing and to improve the efficiency of properties, but to do that across the board, not just at the time of sale. I think that those are the big issues that we see going into this session. Those are the concerns that we have. Laird, maybe I'll let you talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we see for economic stimulus in Vermont.
Well, I don't know if these are exactly in the category of solutions. I did want to speak to a couple of things that I think we need to be mindful of whenever we are talking about broadening the tax base. You have to look at whose shoulders those taxes are going to fall on when we're talking about perhaps reducing the retail tax down to 4.5% and then taxing services, and then also in combination with that going to an AGI system so that people don't have to read in the fine print that that Vermont actually is very competitive once you look at the effective impact of our piggyback tax. The concern that I have, speaks to kind of general economic conditions, and that is that the people who these taxes could hit, at least at a cursory observation of, are the middle class. The people who are going to be providing those services are often small business owners, people who provide, frankly, the bulk of the employment in the state. They're the people who are making between, $97,000 and $150,000. They're not eligible for any kind of adjustment in sensitivity with respect to their property taxes. So, you're kind of looking at the business services, the AGI changes, and things like that, hitting a certain group of people that are, although not vulnerable, they are becoming more so every day. As a proportion of income, these sorts of adjustments are not going to affect the wealthy, and people who are at a much lower level of economic ability and activity are not going to be impacted either. But this sort of policy and things that kind of fall in the same category have a tendency to bifurcate our society in a way where, essentially you end up with either people that are very wealthy or the working poor who mow their lawns, and that's a real concern. I got involved in this process because I've been a small business owner for a long time in Vermont. Started a restaurant business that is now called Three Tomatoes, and have been involved in a few different things. And a lot of the people who were very similar to me, who came up to Vermont kind of with an entrepreneurial spirit and kind of like that sense of ability to initiate a business, contact people directly, be able to have a close community and engender the support with that. Those people are becoming more and more hard pressed to afford to remain here, and so that's one of the concerns. It's not so much a necessarily creating jobs, but let's not uncreate jobs by kind of approaching this with a policy that doesn't really, take a good hard look at what the ultimate consequences of those decisions are. I think that we make a big mistake in Vermont by not funding our travel and tourism industry a little bit more robustly. We are a state that, because of our other policies that have to do with the environment and things like that, place a very high value on the aesthetic criteria of any kind of decision that we make. As a consequence of that, we are essentially looking to make an income on our good looks, which is a terrific way to do it, but we got to let people know that we're out there and that we have these various ways of providing them with a quality entertainment dollar, so to speak. These people are people who come, and a statement that I've heard made, and I agree, is that on vacation everybody's a millionaire for a week, and these people spend money. And the more we can do to cultivate these people who basically use our services, goods, and enjoy Vermont for the wonderful place that it is. Everybody hates to get into any kind of discussion of permit reform, but Act 250, without a land use law, has always been kind of putting the hammer on top of the donkey's head, so to speak. Whenever I talk to anybody who's done any kind of development anywhere else, they'll come up and one of the first questions they're going to ask me is, what is your as-of right to build in this district or in this town or in this circumstance? That enables them to know what they can do by simply going and buying the land and securing a permit that's already vested by the virtue of zoning and what the town has decided to do. With Act 250, we essentially have for any kind of substantial development, a secondary review of that particular process. Although it does take into consideration the activities and the goals and the direction of the town, it is by no means a predictable process. And it's also a process whereby you're asking a developer to not only have an equity interest in the property, but they need to have between 50 and 60% of the soft costs already paid for in order to make the application in the first place. And the outcome, although some high percentage of these permits that are eventually granted through the process, many times it doesn't take into account the premise of risk, reward, and profitability that made that business decision possible in the first place. What I'm seeing more and more often is that people are saying, I don't think so. I'll go somewhere else. I'm not going to take this risk. It's too great a risk. The time frame is uncertain. The outcome is uncertain. And the rewards are not huge. We don't have an economy of scale where somebody opening a business is going to have just an unlimited supply of potential customers unless it's an internet-based circumstance. So those are just a few of the things that kind of concern me about this process and the way that we, I think, can better position ourselves into the future is to be mindful of the goals and the outcomes that we have, and perhaps lower the bar for some of these activities, or at least make them more predictable for people to make their investments and move forward with their plans in Vermont in concert with what we really want. So instead of taking slices out of a finite pie, we essentially build a bigger pie and then take smaller slices out of a bigger pie.
Some ideas, some initiatives. I mean, I just want to make sure before we go to questions.
Well, travel and tourism spending is certainly part of it. I think
more funding for travel.
More funding for travel and tourism. I think if we looked at Act 250, one of the challenges with Act 250 for a lot of people is the fact that every criteria is essentially a negative one, and you kind of have to prove your merit right along. I think that for a successful developer to have a project automatically included in oversight simply because they develop a certain number of properties within a certain length of time is something that could be changed. It's not likely, and I recognize the political challenges of any kind of really comprehensive permit reform, but it hasn't been tweaked a whole lot in a good long while. And I think that is something that bears some pretty close scrutiny.